Welcome back to our lecture that introduces you to organizational behavior, management, and evidence-based management. In this part of the lecture, we will discuss management and managers. What is a manager? Being a manager is all about working with people to achieve organizational goals. But what does it mean in practical terms? What do managers actually do day to day? As I'm sure you can tell me from your experience, managers do just about everything. Take Caroline. Caroline is the theatre manager for Young People's Theatre and is responsible for managing the facilities at the theatre, hiring inquiries, and booking events. Caroline says two of the biggest challenges in her job are balancing the needs of all the people who use the theatre, the actors, the audience, caterers, contractors, and ensuring that no one's needs are neglected or compromised by someone else's activities. Or take John. John is an assistant brand manager at Procter & Gamble. On a typical day, John might be involved in meetings with his brand marketing group, his team members, and his brand advertising agencies to discuss any new business developments, marketing strategies, and upcoming advertising campaigns. A big part of his role involves researching new opportunities, developing recommendations about handling business problems, and explaining new projects to team members so that they understand how to execute them properly. One of John's biggest challenges is managing emails and information requests. He gets around 70 emails per day. Andre is the CEO of two restaurants. He practices management by walking around because he believes that personal interactions are the best way to learn and develop good ideas. Each day, Andre meets with his management team to discuss business priorities and day-to-day operational issues. During meal service times, he chats with the guests at every table so that he can meet customers and build relationships with regular patrons. Managing a business based on the quality of the customer experience means that one of Andre's biggest challenges is making sure that every aspect of the business gets attention, because even the smallest things can blow out of proportion. Or take Shipla. Shipla is a project manager for Deutsche Bank in India. Her work involves project management and process reengineering, so she is responsible for managing change processes in her organization. One of the biggest parts of her job is communicating about projects with people spread around the globe and across different time zones. Shipla finds that collaborative technologies like conference calls help her to coordinate and share information with teams across the globe. Managers are then the people responsible for everything that organizations do. That hospitals provide proper treatment to sick people, that schools deliver educational courses to students, that charities deliver aid to people who need it, and that businesses offer products that meet customer needs. Generally speaking, managers are the people responsible for making sure that organizations provide goods and services to society. Describing what managers do is not easy because just as no two organizations are exactly alike, neither are managers' jobs. However, managers do share some common job elements, regardless of whether the manager is a foreman in a construction company or a CEO of a bank. Thus, we can look at managers' functions and say that managers perform certain activities as they direct and oversee others' work. The functions approach was first proposed in the early part of the 20th century by a French industrialist, Henri Fayol, who suggested that all managers plan, organize, command, coordinate, and control. Today, these management functions have been condensed into four: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Let's look briefly at each function. Planning. Organizations exist to achieve some purpose. Through planning, managers define their purpose and decide how to achieve it. Planning includes defining goals, establishing strategy, and developing plans to coordinate activities. Planning ensures that the work to be done is kept in proper focus and that organizational members keep their attention on what is most important. Organizing. Managers are also responsible for arranging and structuring work to accomplish the organization's goals, and this function is called organizing. Organizing includes determining what tasks are to be done and by whom, how tasks are to be grouped, who reports to whom, and where decisions are to be made. Third function is leading. Leading is a part of manager's job that involves directing and coordinating the work activities of others. When managers motivate employees, provide guidance to others, select the most effective communication channels, or resolve conflicts among organizational members, they are leading. The fourth management function is controlling. This involves monitoring, comparing, and correcting work performance. After the goals are set, the plans formulated, when the structural arrangements have been determined and the people hired, trained, and motivated, there has to be some evaluation to see if things are going as planned. And any significant deviations will require that the manager gets work back on track. The functions approach is very useful for understanding the fundamentals of management. Its continued popularity is a tribute to its clarity and simplicity. The functions provide simple and discrete categories for classifying the thousands of activities that managers carry out and the techniques they use. To understand how managers perform these functions, we can consider the roles that managers play in organizations. What are managerial roles? Managerial roles refer to specific behaviors expected of a manager. To better understand the concept of a role, think of the different roles you play in your daily life. Parent, spouse, employee, student, volunteer, sports team member, friend, and so forth. And then think of the different things you are expected to do in these roles. It is similar to managerial roles. Our understanding of the roles that managers play in organizations comes originally from the research conducted by Canadian management scholar Henry Mintzberg. In the late 1960s, Mintzberg did an empirical study of several chief executives at work, and his discoveries challenged the long-held notions about managers' jobs. For example, in contrast to the predominant view that managers are reflective thinkers who carefully and systematically process information before making decisions, Mintzberg found that the managers have very little time to pause and reflect. Why? Well, you can easily answer this question. This is because managers encounter constant interruptions and can rarely concentrate on a specific activity for more than a few minutes. Indeed, according to Mintzberg, managers' activities usually lasted less than 9 minutes each. Mintzberg concluded that managers perform 10 different but interrelated roles. These 10 roles are grouped around interpersonal relationships, the transfer of information, and decision-making. The interpersonal roles are the roles that involve people, subordinates, and people outside the organization, and other duties that are ceremonial and symbolic in nature. One role is figurehead. As figureheads, managers have social, ceremonial, and legal responsibilities. They are expected to be a source of inspiration. People look up to them as a person with authority. Another interpersonal role is leader. As leaders, managers provide guidance and direction for their team, department, or the entire organization, and also manage the performance and responsibilities of their subordinates. As liaisons, managers communicate with internal and external contacts, and they also network on behalf of the organization or the organizational unit. In turn, the group of informational roles involves collecting, receiving, and disseminating information. As monitors, managers seek out information related to the organization and industry. They look for relevant changes in the environment. They also monitor their team in terms of both team productivity and team member well-being. As disseminators, managers communicate potentially useful information to their colleagues and their team. And as spokespersons, they represent and speak on behalf of their organizations. Finally, the decisional roles entail making decisions or choices. As negotiators, managers take part in negotiations within their teams, department, or organization. As resource allocators, managers determine where organizational resources are best applied, and this may involve allocating funding as well as assigning staff and other organizational resources. As disturbance handlers, managers take charge when an organization or team hits an unexpected roadblock, and they help mediate disputes and resolve conflicts. Finally, as entrepreneurs, managers create and control change within the organization. This means solving problems, generating new ideas, and implementing them. Mintzberg's roles approach complements the functions view of management by offering additional insight into what managers do. The roles approach demonstrates that as managers perform each function, they interact with a variety of different people and adopt different roles in those relationships. To help you understand managerial roles better, and also to help you reflect on what you do as a manager and improve your performance, in this week's unit task, we invite you to examine your own managerial roles. The detailed description of what you expect it to do is provided in the final summary section of the online self-guided lesson. Briefly, for 2 days during this week, we ask you to keep a diary. A template for the diary is available for download from your self-guided lesson. In this diary, you need to record how much time you spend performing each of the 10 managerial roles that we have just discussed. If there are some roles that you don't do daily, but they're still an important part of your role, weekly, monthly, or annually, you will also have the chance to record this in the diary. Once you've completed the diary, we ask you to briefly answer several questions. Which roles take most of your time and why? Which roles take the least of your time and why? Which roles are the most important in your job? Are you able to spend enough time performing the most important roles? And can you reallocate your time so as to give more time to these more important roles? How confident are you in performing the most important roles? And what would you need to do to improve your confidence in performing them? Do you set aside time to reflect on your work? How often do you reflect on your work? Daily, weekly, or less frequently? And finally, what can you do to improve your reflection on your work? Once you've done that, then on Blackboard discussion board, the one that's for the whole cohort, on Lecture 3 discussion forum, starting a new thread to help us identify your contribution, we ask you to post your answers to the questions. Which roles are most important in your job? How confident are you in performing these roles? And what would you need to do to improve your confidence in performing them? And then, of course, we also ask you to read the contributions of your fellow students and discuss it with them. We also ask you to keep this diary document and your answers to these questions in a safe place, at least for the duration of the module, and preferably until you complete the entire MBA program. At the end of this module, you will be asked to submit the Learning and Professional Development portfolio. And one of the questions for the portfolio will relate to this unit task, and it will ask you to reflect on your development in managerial roles as a result of your learning throughout this module. Okay, let's get back to our discussion of managers and management. So far, we have considered the universal components of a manager's job, as if a manager's job is essentially the same for a top-level executive or a first-line supervisor in a business firm or in a governmental agency, in a large corporation or a small startup in Paris, Texas or Paris, France. However, there are also aspects of a managerial job that are specific to manager's level in the organization, the size of the organization's profit orientation, its industry, and national context. All of these influence how the managers perform their job. For example, the organizational level at which a manager operates affects the degree to which they perform different tasks and functions, and the emphasis that is placed on their various activities. Managers at every organizational level make decisions and engage in planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. But the amount of time they give to each activity is not necessarily the same. Organizational size affects management by influencing the importance of different managerial roles. Organizational size can be defined using a number of measures, such as the number of employees, annual sales, or total assets. For simplicity, we define it here as the number of employees. Managing a large organization does differ materially from managing a small one. For example, in a small business, manager's most important role is that of a spokesperson, meeting with customers, arranging financing with banks, searching for new opportunities, stimulating change. In contrast, the most important concern of a manager in a large organization would be directed internally, deciding, for example, which organizational units get what in terms of available resources, and so forth. An organization's profit orientation affects management by determining the focus of organizational activities on efficiency and effectiveness. Profit, as you know, of course, is the difference between an organization's revenues and operating costs. Businesses are profit-oriented because they fund their operations using capital provided by investors, such as company owners, shareholders, and financial institutions, in exchange for a share of future profits. Businesses generate profits by maximizing the revenues they generate from sales or by minimizing their operating costs. If a business cannot generate sufficient profits, it will eventually become bankrupt, so profit determines the organization's survival. Consequently, managers in profit-oriented businesses focus on efficiency in minimizing costs and on effectiveness in generating revenues so as to maximize profits. Now, in contrast, not-for-profit organizations such as government agencies, schools, hospitals, charities, community groups have a different focus on efficiency and effectiveness because they do not rely on profits for survival. Not-for-profit organizations use funds provided by governments, sponsors, or donors to deliver goods and services. Managers in not-for-profit organizations thus focus on efficiency in minimizing costs and on effectiveness in delivering services so as to be able to help as many members of the community as possible. Finally, there's a general issue of whether management concepts and practices are transferable across national borders. Countries' economic, political, and social and cultural environments differ greatly, and they both shape the opportunities and constraints for organizations and management. And of course, they also impact managers through shaping their values and worldviews. When we discuss management and managers, therefore, it's important to consider both the universal and the context-specific aspects of managerial job. Manager, however, is not just a job, it's a professional identity, which brings us to the question, what is a profession? Sociologists define professions as occupational groups that have the following key characteristics. They provide a unique and essential social service. They have a defined body of knowledge and skills beyond grasp of lay people. Practitioners of a profession have high social prestige. They accept broad personal responsibility for decisions. They can be sued for malpractice. Professionals focus on service rather than on monetary rewards. Professions are granted a high level of public trust. Professions are characterized by self-regulation. They have a self-governing organization of practitioners that maintains control over licensing and certification standards. And professional conduct is guided by a code of ethics. We call doctors a profession and we call lawyers a profession. By that definition, do you think management qualifies as a profession? Think about it for a moment. As a brief aside, I have recently been to the Queen's House. This is a royal palace in the London borough of Greenwich. When you come to London, this is one of the less known tourist attractions that I would highly recommend you to visit. The Queen's House has a collection of great artworks, including paintings by William Hodges, George Stubbs, Hans Holbein, William Hogarth, and Thomas Gainsborough. This collection includes a very fine portrait of Sir Francis Drake. Now, if you know your history, Drake was the second man to circumnavigate the world, which he did in 1577, 1580, and given that Magellan was killed before his voyage was completed, he was the first commander of an expedition to return with full success. However, it's not the Francis Drake's portrait that sparked my attention, but a companion portrait of his cousin, Richard. Richard Drake was not just Sir Francis' cousin, but he was also his business manager. As the explanatory note next to the portrait describes, the portrait bears the motto of a true manager, always ready to serve. It's quite unusual, I think, for a manager to be so celebrated, to have his portrait in a gallery, and to have his role so publicly acknowledged. We erect statues to politicians and generals, we venerate poets and composers, we revere the achievements of scientists and doctors. Managers, however, are rarely accorded the same respect. This, I believe, is deeply unfair, and we all need to work to rectify that. Taken more broadly, the question of whether management is a profession has been subject to a long-standing debate. Some say that management is not a profession and can never become one because of what managers do. Here's the gist of their argument. The traditional professions have a clear focus. The lawyer is always concerned with matters of law, the physician with the health of a patient. In contrast, the manager's focus may change significantly and unpredictably from one day to the next. The proponents of this argument further say that a professional is an expert, whereas a manager is a jack of all trades and master of none, the antithesis of the professional. They also say that the manager's contribution is inherently difficult to measure. The lawyer, for example, writes a contract and charges for her time. Her work is finite. Even when she has an ongoing relationship with a corporate client, her contribution is always a specialized input, measurable in terms of the amount billed. But the manager is responsible for the combined value generated by all inputs to the firm. Those who argue that management is not a profession also point to the fact that the field of management doesn't have licensing or professional certification. Consider an analogy with medicine. Although we obviously would not allow an unqualified person to conduct brain surgery, many businesses are run by people without MBAs. A contrasting argument is that management must be a profession. And this is the view that I personally and all academics who teach in business schools strongly endorse. And this is the view we want to inculcate in you, our students. Why is it important for management to be a profession? Businesses and not-for-profit organizations are the greatest institutions in society. They do more to lift people out of poverty than any governmental plan has ever done. These institutions deserve management and leadership that is regarded as professional. Being a professional means having the knowledge and skills to do the job right and well, so that society can trust you to exercise control and judgment. Being a professional also means having a professional service ethic. Given the power and resources that are under control of managers, it would be highly problematic if management didn't actually have a professional service ethic. As a professional manager, you need to think not just about utilitarian goals, but you need to connect your work, your service, to the wider implications. How and who do you serve? How does what you do advance not just the bottom line of your organization, but the welfare of your employees, the community in which your organization is located, and the society as a whole? For the doctor, the professional obligation is between the doctor and the patient. For the lawyer, it's between the lawyer and the client. But when we talk about management as a profession, professional obligations actually are much broader. They're not just to the customers and clients or to shareholders, but also to a variety of stakeholders: employees, their families, local communities, suppliers and other organizations, their country, and, considering that many organizations operate internationally, potentially the whole world. We, your tutors, and you, our students, all need to contribute to further professionalization of management, to making the management into a highly regarded profession. As your tutors, we will help you develop your management knowledge and skills. But you also have to take personal responsibility for developing those and for making sure you become trusted experts in management. We will teach you how to conduct business in an ethical and socially responsible way, but it is for you to practice ethical behavior in all areas of your work life. We provide you with the opportunity to join management associations. For example, because our program is accredited by the Association of MBAs, you automatically become the member of this association. You're also invited to join the Chartered Management Institute. But you need to make your membership matter. And you also need to find out whether there is a management association in your country or your industry and to join and support it. Finally, we will train you in the practice of evidence-based management. But it is up to you to practice such management in order to make good decisions. But what is evidence-based management? This will be the subject of our next section. When you're ready, please move on to our next recording.